Hello, true duelists. It's YGO Strat's Yu-Gi-Oh! Single Card History, where I'm going to be talking about some of the cards that have impacted Yu-Gi-Oh! Throughout the years, and some of the other ones that didn't. Today's card, what if Imperial Order was a cat? Well, then it'd be Naturia Beast. Naturia Beast was first released in Hidden Arsenal 2 in 2010 as a secret rare, with notable reprints to date, including a gold rare print in Gold Series Haunted Mine in 2012, an ultra rare print in Dual Power in 2019, and a dual terminal ultra parallel rare in Hidden Arsenal Chapter 1 in 2022. For time on the ban list, this cat has not been put in the Forever box at any point in time, which is apparently how I've chosen to say that it's never been on the Forbidden and Limited list at any point. A level 5 Earth Attribute Beast-type Synchro monster with 2200 attack and 1700 defense. The materials to summon it are any Earth tuner and any one or more non-Earth tuners, and its effect reads: when a spell card is activated, quick effect, you can send the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard, negate that activation, and if you do, destroy it. This card must remain face up on the field to activate and resolve this effect. Do I need to explain why this card is good? Are you confused by it in any way? It shuts off spell cards, and in practical terms, it does so infinitely. Yeah, it needs to mill cards, so it can only negate as long as you have cards to mill, and yes, it needs to be face up to activate and resolve its effect. But forget once per turn, this doesn't even have once per chains. You can't even be cheeky and Book of Moon it as Chain Link 3, it'll just negate that Book of Moon too. This is an Imperial Order on legs, but only for the opponent. I mean, you could negate your own spells with it, but you could also not. And that's why it sees play. An insane buff to any end board that can make it. It's been viable from day one up until today, 13 years later as I'm making this video. And if by some chance you're watching this in like 2033, I'll make the claim now, it's still good then too, because it shuts off spells for the opponent, and that is always a good thing. Out of the gate, Naturia Beast found a home not just in any deck, but right into the meta. X-Sabers were a solid synchro spam deck of Earth monsters, and they had their own native level 5s that they could make plays with anyways. So fitting in Naturia Beast was as easy as putting it into your extra deck. The deck could hand loop like a machine back in the day, and ripping a card or two from the opponent's hand while ending on a big dirty beater like Gotham's was fierce. But when it came to protecting that board, protecting it from say a dark hole or your back row from the likes of Trunade or Cold Wave, that could be a life sentence against the opponent. This was one of the top dogs for a while, and as long as X-Saber has been played, Naturia Beast has been a part of the deck, even a decade or two later. I don't care, I'm calling it now. X-Sabers in 2033 will be playing this card. And that statement is probably true for all decks that play Earth tuners and non-tuners, because it's been the case forever now. Karakuri is another deck of all Earths that can make level 5s without needing to adapt, and I apologize in advance for the pronunciations, because oh boy is my NA education about to shine through. Nanishi is a level 3 tuner that can give you an extra normal summon of a Karakuri monster per turn, and Inashichi is a level 2 Stratos. Get the engine going for a turn and a Nat Beast to boot, all from a simple 2-card combo. You can bet that this saw play, and even meta success back in 2011. Any deck playing the TG cards, be it pure TG with traps, a Madolche deck with a TG engine in it, also had access to Naturia Beast, and while these weren't the best decks at the time, they were definitely playable, and Naturia Beast was a staple of them as well. And of course, you gotta mention it, a deck like Six Samurai had no trouble making Naturia Beast. Kagamusha and Elder make a level 5 synchro and are both Earth, both summonable off each other from Asceticism as well. So if you have one and Asceticism, you could make your Xian, or you could make the cat. Whatever you're feeling. Negate 1 spell, or 6? Another deck that I have to mention is, of course, Jeff Jones's Earth Psychic deck from YCS Toronto 2012. It's kind of a one-off top in 2012, right as everyone else is playing Wind-Ups and Dino Rabbit and Inzektor with the then new limits. And Jeff Jones walked in with an Earth Pile deck playing Grand Soil, a resilient Psychic engine boosted by the then newly unlimited Emergency Teleport, and that Grand Soil was pre-errata. So, coupled with some great battle floaters, the deck could be spamming out Earths and Psychics, and wouldn't you believe it, the Earths could be used to make Naturia Beast. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. This is a cool-ass deck, and I will never understand how it did as well as it did. I guess that's just the difference between being an actual good and competent player that understands the game and Craig Fee. Karakuri and its variants would continue to see success and often including Naturia Beast, sometimes incorporating a Gear Gia engine as well, but the real change comes in, wouldn't you know it, in 2014. Because 2014 saw the release of Duelist Alliance, and as such I am legally obligated to tell you that changed the metagame, drastically upping the strength of decks needed to compete at the time. One deck that was stronger than those that had come before it was of course Clifford, and hilariously enough, this is the deck of all the Duelist Alliance decks that wound up playing Naturia Beast. This was straight out of left field for me back in the day, and I still love it because making anything from the extra deck took a decent amount of effort since all Clifford scales will lock you into only summoning Clee monsters. But that doesn't prevent you from activating, say, Emergency Teleport to summon out Recover, a level 1 Earth Tuner from the deck, before playing any of your scales, and then normal summoning any Clee, making it a level 4 Earth. At that point, you can make your Naturia Beast and then scale up to make your, pendulum summon of however many Clifford monsters you wanted to. This was exclusively a side deck play for Clifford decks from what I've been able to find, saved for specific matchups that would benefit it. But seeing it in person shook me to my core in 2014, and I will not forget it. The next prominent deck to play it would end up being PePe, because would you look at that, the Performapal Pendulum Sorcerer was Earth attribute for no particular reason, and if anyone was brave enough to play Monarchs, shutting off their spells would be a death sentence. Oh, and not allowing scales in the opponent's Pendulum deck, assuming you were playing the Inevitable Mirror in PePe format. More often than not, decks would play copies of King of the Feral Imps to search out, say, Gigabyte for a free rank 4 material, but players could opt to play a copy of X-Saber Palomuro, a level 1 Earth Tuner, and you could search that instead. Normal summon it, and that meant you had access to the kitty. Some lists would opt to main deck this package, while others more often than not sided it. It's hard to know whether or not this type of package would have been adapted into the main deck and become more prominent, because PePe fucking died in 2016 in both the form of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Metagame and in the grand scheme of the internet, since the frog was named a hate symbol. Talk about a ban list. Dracopals would play the same package shortly after because Monarch was still strong, and while PePe was dead, Dracopals wasn't, and that meant the mirror match could still be a thing. This was the exact same play as PePe, however, not much to say about it. X-Saber Palomuro, search with Feral Imps, make on command. Not much else to be said. I think I'm obligated to mention Dracopals in these videos though, so there you go. After this, Nat Beast took a back seat as Blue Eyes, of all things, took its time in the limelight, but it would show up again in True King Dinosaur decks, because that deck was a menace of don't play Yu-Gi-Oh! Tier decks, and access to Dolka and Logia just isn't enough for dinosaur players. Oh, and True King of all calamities, the rank 9 of no in Yu-Gi-Oh! Form. A little known use for VFD is that it changed the attributes of all monsters on the field, including yours. The biggest benefit to this was to obviously not allow the opponent to use that attribute's effects or attack with them, but if you called Earth on your turn, you could say, turn a level 1 Jurok Aolo into an Earth Tuner, and any level 4 dinosaur on your field into an Earth non-tuner, and there you go. Now the opponent can face down VFD and Nat Beast. No monster effects, no spells, no fun. This was not a common thing in dinosaur decks, as it wasn't needed to make your board virtually unbreakable, but it is as close as VFD ever got to being a combo enabler, so I'm gonna mention it. But that variant in dinosaurs wasn't the most common play, and Naturia Beast becomes a street cat for a little bit, which is a stupid, in-theme way of me saying that it doesn't see play for a good few years. Not that it didn't see any more play, it just wasn't a mandatory staple as it had been in previous decks. 60-card pile decks would often play it because grass looks greener, resolving is probably anything you want it to be, especially when cards like Glowapulp and Mizuki and Giant Rex and Damage Juggler to search out Hat Tricker or anything else you want to do. Look, there's Earth cards that could be played to make the cat, but another somewhat popular deck that played it would end up being Burning Abyss. Burning Abyss Block Dragon is a deck. And yeah, there's a deck not named Adamantipator that also abused Block Dragon, and it was Burning Abyss. As I say too often, Block Dragon Burning Abyss was not the best deck of its format, but it's probably about the peak of quote-unquote modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Running 37 monsters and often to not 3 copies of Sekka's Light as the only spell card. Although occasionally you'd see builds such as this one here from a Utah regional playing just some generic power spells, although it's worth noting that decks always played almost entirely monsters because it wanted to vomit all of them into the grave as often as possible, be it through the likes of Dante, Mathematician, and even just getting off extenders like Gallus the Starbeast, because Earth's in grave meant Block Dragon Fuel, and Block Dragon Fuel meant pluses for days. The deck made some solidly annoying end boards. We're talking Naturia Beast, Avramax made with IP, and a lovely Fossil Dyna to just stop you from playing. Might not sound too crazy, but I assure you it wasn't a bad deck, just one whose ceiling was far higher than most players can reach. Or at least that's my take. It wasn't long after Block Dragon Burning Abyss was a deck that Glow Up Bulb would be hit on the ban list, and Naturia Beast's splash ability tends to be tied at the hip to the bulb. As such, Naturia Beast fell out of the meta once again as other threats rose up. Funnily enough though, Adamancipator was a deck that would run Earth Tuners, and they just didn't play it, because the deck was simply better off dedicating its plays to even-leveled plays, and the extra deck was already way too tight for a niche card of Nat Beast, as crazy as that sounds. Besides, it's not like the deck needed Nat Beast to make, saying no hard to do to your opponent. As such, it was gone for some time, although it did show up again as recently as I'm making this video. And 2010 me wouldn't believe you if you told me it, but it showed up in an actual Naturia deck. Yeah, with the release of some long overdue legacy support for Naturia and Darkwing Blast, the deck, or more aptly, an engine of Naturia cards became pretty damn reliable, especially when you ran the engine in with a slew of other better cards, like the Ishizu Millers, and more notably, the Runick engine. Runick was a deck in a similar enough spot to Nat Beast, and had enough good cards to make for some solid gameplay as an engine, but not quite enough to be competent on its own as a deck. As such, players paired it often with other engines, like Sprite engines, which were pretty damn effective while Alph was legal, or as a pure stun variant with Floodgates, because some people just want to see the world burn. And of course, very popular was Naturia Runick. Naturia Camellia and Mole Cricket made access to Nat Beast as easy as could be, and that was a solid, reliable bit of engine to help combo with Runick's engine ability to solve monster effects, pop spell and trap, and in general just be a nuisance. Naturia Runick would prove itself to be a strong choice, alternatively, for players in a Shizu tier limit format, if such a thing could be said. It's not like it was consistently winning, but it was, one of two other options that existed, and Naturia Runick, funny enough, would prove itself to be the build with the most longevity, as it was still a popular deck choice in early 2023 formats after tier limits had been removed from the meta. And as I make this video, that's where we're at. Naturia Beast is once again a threat in a meta deck. Not the best meta deck, but it is a card you have to be aware of and be prepared for, since odds are you'll see at least one of it at some point in a big name tournament. As always, I of course have not mentioned every instance of a deck that played this. For example, I can remember my friend's Raccoon deck that he called Rack City, sometimes even making it off a single obedience school and then just calling it a turn. And honestly, there were instances where that was enough, because Lord knows opening 2 terraforming and your field spell against a Nat Beast is not a fun time, which is probably a fair statement in and of itself. Nat Beast is not a fun time. As I said in the beginning, it's basically Imperial Order on legs, or at the very least it's close enough to be played like it is. Granted, Imperial Order's an absolute nightmare of a card, since the majority of things to remove it are going to be spell cards, and Naturia Beast is a monster, so there are cards that can negate it that don't have to be a spell card. And Naturia Beast has to be face up, so if you find a way, if you play something like, say, UCT and can book it, flip it face down before it resolves, there's more ways to play around it is what I'm getting at, but that doesn't mean it's not a strong contender for your extra deck. Overall, Naturia Beast is a true staple of the dual terminal lore. An insanely good boss monster, and an insanely bad deck. Its ability to shut off a third of all cards in the game so long as you have cards in your deck make it annoying in the best of cases and brutal in the worst. Praise Xenu, it's as tedious to make as it is, because if it were any more generic, it would be unbearable, if not outright banned. As I make this video, Glow Up Bulb is banned in the TCG, but it's come back to one in the OCG and may soon follow now that Hulk is dead. And when Gub is here, the cat is near. It rhymes, so it's true. So long as even halfway decent Earth monsters exist, this card will continue to be viable in extra decks. Because when you can't use spells, the opponent has pretty well spelled out your doom. And so that's our look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Single card history, Naturia Beast. Stay tuned for our next video, and feel free to suggest some cards to review or what type of video you'd like to see. Don't forget to like, and as always, subscribe to YGO Strats to impress your smoking Italian wife, and so you too can be a true duelist.